Hello, Namaskar. This is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. Happy Independence Day to all fellow Indians, also citizens of some other countries who are also celebrating their Independence Day today. We'll tell you which countries on the show. We'll also bring you highlights from Prime Minister Modi's speech at the Red Fort, his 11th such speech and the longest by any Indian PM. We also decided to look at India's journey, a country that the world had written off, a depleted economy and battered military, a democracy that was not expected to survive. How India proved all the naysayers wrong. It's the ultimate underdog story. But that is not to say that we do not have problems to fix. The brutal rape and murder of a young doctor in Kolkata remains in focus. In neighboring Bangladesh, another round of attacks on Sheikh Hasina supporters. In Afghanistan, the Taliban marks 3 years of their takeover with a military parade. Taiwan's electronics manufacturing giant Foxconn is making big bets on India. Their chief met Prime Minister Modi. We'll tell you what's at stake. In the US, Elon Musk's AI chatbot is spewing offensive and dangerous content. A special report on the coffee craze in India, how multinational chains are multiplying and how their business is doing. And if you've signed up for a free trial of Disney Plus, you can't sue for the death of your wife. We'll explain the story. It's a must-watch for each one of you who agrees to terms and conditions without reading them. The headlines first. Truce talks over Gaza begin in Qatar. Israel is attending these talks, but Hamas is not. The discussions are being mediated by the US, Egypt and Qatar. Since the war began in October, more than 40,000 people have died in Gaza. These talks come amid risks of a wider regional conflict. Pakistan's military arrests 3 former army officers. They've been held for their alleged link with former ISI chief Faiz Hamid. On Monday, the former spy chief was arrested for alleged misconduct. Hamid is the first ISI chief to face a court-martial in Pakistan. He is considered to be close to jailed former Prime Minister Imran Khan. Thailand's Pheu Thai party chooses its prime ministerial candidate, names former Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatre's daughter as their new leader. It comes a day after a court dismissed the incumbent premier. Tomorrow, lawmakers will vote to approve the new Prime Minister. The US vice presidential debate will be held on 1st October. Democratic nominee Tim Walz will take on Republican J.D. Vance in New York City. The presidential debate between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump has already been confirmed for 10 September. Palau accuses China of spreading fake news over the country being unsafe, claims it's a bid by Beijing to get the Pacific island nation to break ties with Taiwan. Palau is one of just 12 states worldwide that recognizes self-ruled Taiwan. In June, Palau blamed China for a major cybersecurity attack. And Japan lifts its mega quake warning. The government tells people to quote-unquote go back to normal. The week-old alert had prompted thousands to cancel their holidays. Many also stocked up on essentials, emptying shelves in several stores.
Everybody now awaiting the arrival of Prime Minister Narendra Modi here at Red Fort.
भारत माता की, भारत माता की।
That the people of a democracy are its driving force, its engines of renewal and revival. The Prime Minister will share with the nation the progress made and outline the programs in the making, the foregrounding of inclusion, equity and growth in all development initiatives.
77 years of independence. It's a significant milestone for India. 77 years ago on this day, India became a free and independent nation. This day also holds great significance for Prime Minister Modi. Today he delivered his 11th consecutive speech from the Red Fort, and with this he's joined an exclusive club of leaders. Only 2 other Prime Ministers have given 11 back-to-back speeches, Jawaharlal Nehru and Indira Gandhi. So Modi has become the 3rd Prime Minister to do so. He's also given the longest Independence Day speech by any Indian PM. Today he spoke for a record 98 minutes. That's 1 hour and 38 minutes. And why is this speech important? Because Prime Ministers use it to spell out their vision for the year ahead. It gives you an idea of the government's policy priorities. Prime Minister Modi is in his 3rd term. In the last 10 years, he commanded a majority. But now he leads a coalition government. Does that mean a change in the agenda? Well, today's speech did not reflect that. Modi signaled that he will continue with his ambitious reforms. And while he touched upon a lot of subjects, we've shortlisted the big highlights for you. Number 1, a developed India by 2047. That is the theme of this year's Independence Day. Also one of the big goals set by the Prime Minister. He said, India is entering a golden era.
मेरे प्यारे देशवासियों, ये अवसर हमें जाने नहीं देना है, ये मौका हमें जाने नहीं देना चाहिए और इसी मौके को पकड़ करके अपने सपने और संकल्पों को लेकर के चल पड़ेंगे तो हम देश की स्वर्णिम भारत की जो अपेक्षा और हमें विकसित भारत का 2047 का लक्ष्य हम पूरा करके रहेंगे.
A developed India by 2047, that's when we complete 100 years of independence. And how will India become a developed economy? Prime Minister Modi spoke about economic reforms. He wants to double down on manufacturing. Today he made an outreach to Indian states, to all the chief ministers, asking them to lend a hand by developing business-friendly policies and attracting overseas investment.
मैं राज्य सरकारों से आग्रह करता हूं कि आप निवेशकों को आकर्षित करने के लिए स्पष्ट नीति निर्धारित कीजिए, गुड गवर्नेंस का आश्वासन दीजिए, लॉ एंड ऑर्डर सिचुएशन के लिए उनको भरोसा दीजिए. हर राज्य एक तंदुरुस्त स्पर्धा में आगे आए. राज्य के बीच निवेशकों को खींचने के लिए स्पर्धा होनी चाहिए. सिर्फ भारत सरकार से काम ये होता नहीं है, राज्य सरकारों की बहुत बड़ी आवश्यकता होती है, क्योंकि जो भी प्रोजेक्ट लगने वाला है उस राज्य में लगने वाला है, उसको हर राज्य के साथ.
The government's reform agenda is not limited to the economy. The Prime Minister also spoke about reforming India's civil code. A renewed push for the Uniform Civil Code. This code is basically a set of laws. Laws which are common to all sections of society. Laws which apply to all religions in India. Right now, different religions have different personal laws related to marriage, inheritance, etc. Modi's party, the BJP, has long advocated for a common law for all Indians. In a significant statement today, the Prime Minister called the current set of laws communal.
अब समय की मांग है कि देश में एक सेकुलर सिविल कोड हो. हमने कम्युनल सिविल कोड में 75 साल बिताए हैं. अब हमें सेकुलर सिविल कोड की तरफ जाना होगा और तब जाकर के देश में धर्म के आधार पर जो भेदभाव हो रहे हैं, सामान्य नागरिक को जो दूरी महसूस होती है, उससे हमें मुक्ति मिलेगी.
He also touched upon some current events and raised the issue of women's safety in India. Recently, a doctor was brutally raped and murdered. This happened in a medical college in Kolkata, the capital of the eastern state of West Bengal. The victim was a trainee doctor. She was raped and murdered on duty. There is nationwide outrage over this case. Here's what the Prime Minister said today.
मैं आज लाल किले से फिर बार एक अपनी पीड़ा व्यक्त करना चाहता हूं. एक समाज के नाते हमें गंभीरता से सोचना होगा कि हमारी माताओं, बहनों, बेटियों के प्रति जो अत्याचार हो रहे हैं, उसके प्रति देश का आक्रोश है, जन सामान्य का आक्रोश है. इस आक्रोश को मैं महसूस कर रहा हूं. इसको देश को, समाज को, हमारी राज्य सरकारों को गंभीरता से लेना होगा.
Without specifying the case or the state government in question, the Prime Minister called for a swift investigation and strict punishment for the perpetrators. Then he spoke about Bangladesh. This is the Indian Prime Minister's first public comment about the chaos in Bangladesh. He called for normalcy. He expressed concern for the safety of Hindus there.
बांग्लादेश में जो कुछ भी हुआ है उसको लेकर पड़ोसी देश के नाते चिंता होना मैं इसको समझ सकता हूं। मैं आशा करता हूं कि वहां पर हालात जल्द ही सामान्य होंगे।
Beyond the issues, there were some big ideas in the speech, like one nation, one election. It's something Prime Minister Modi has been pushing for since he first took office in 2014. The idea is fairly simple, but it's also controversial. Right now, India has multiple elections almost every few months. There are different timelines for the states, and then there's the general election. So at any given point in time, some part of the country is in an election cycle. The idea is to change that, to hold all elections together. Hence the name One Nation, One Election.
कि हर 3 महीने 6 महीने कहीं न कहीं चुनाव चल रहा है। वन नेशन वन इलेक्शन के लिए देश को आगे आना होगा।
Like I said, it's a controversial idea. Not everyone is on board, so we'll have to wait and see how the government navigates this. But speaking of elections, the Prime Minister also wants fresh faces in politics. Today, he urged the youth of India to get involved, 100,000 of them at least. He wants at least 1 lakh young people without any political lineage or family history to join politics.
उनको जो पसंद हो दल में जाए, उस दल में जाकर के वो जनप्रतिनिधि बन करके आगे आए। देश तय करके चले कि आने वाले दिनों में 1 लाख ऐसे नौजवान जो परिवार राजनीति से दूर दूर का संबंध नहीं है, ऐसे फ्रेश ब्लड आएंगे तो सोच भी नहीं आएगी, सामर्थ्य भी नहीं आएगा।
Then he talked about the Olympics. India wants to host the Olympic Games in 2036. That is 12 years from now.
भारत ने G20 को ऑर्गेनाइज किया, हिंदुस्तान के अनेक शहरों में ऑर्गेनाइज किया, 200 से ज्यादा इवेंट किए। पूरे विश्व में G20 का इतना बड़ा व्याप, इतना बड़ा कार्यक्रम कभी नहीं हुआ, इस बार हुआ। इसने एक बात सिद्ध कर दी है कि भारत में बड़े से बड़े कार्यक्रम ऑर्गेनाइज करने की ताकत है। भारत को किसी को भी हॉस्पिटैलिटी का सामर्थ्य भारत में सबसे ज्यादा है। अगर ये सिद्ध हो चुका है तो साथियों, हिंदुस्तान का सपना है कि 2036 में जो ओलंपिक होगा वो मेरे हिंदुस्तान की धरती पर हो, इसके लिए हम तैयारी कर रहे हैं।
India's Olympic champions, the medal winners from Paris, were also present at the Red Fort today. Later in the day, the Prime Minister hosted them at his official residence on Lok Kalyan Marg. Beyond traditional sports, Prime Minister Modi also wants India to lead the global gaming market.
भारत के पास बहुत बड़ी विरासत है। हम गेमिंग की दुनिया में बहुत नई टैलेंट को लेकर के आ सकते हैं। विश्व के हर बच्चे को हमारे देश के बनी हुई गेमिंग की ओर आकर्षित कर सकते हैं। मैं चाहता हूं कि भारत के बच्चे, भारत के नौजवान वे गेमिंग की दुनिया को लीड करें।
So those were the big takeaways. They spell out the priorities and the vision of the Prime Minister in his third term. It's an ambitious agenda. We'll be tracking the progress for you. Let's go on a journey back in time, all the way to August 15th, 1947. I know we have grand images of that day, birth of a great nation, defiance against imperialism, and the awakening of an ancient civilization. But the reality was very different. The country had been dismembered. Communal riots had broken out in many parts. The economy was drained and confusion gripped the people. We had freedom, but our future was uncertain. Things could have gone either way. A lot of countries gained independence in the second half of the 20th century, but not all of them succeeded. Just look at our neighbor Pakistan, a failed military state. That's what many pundits predicted for India too. Darkness, chaos and failure. That was a prediction for India. I have some examples. This is what Winston Churchill had to say.
Power will go to the hands of rascals, rogues, freebooters. All Indian leaders will be of low caliber and men of straw. They will fight amongst themselves for power and India will be lost in political squabbles.
Churchill also questioned India's unity. He said India is no more united than the equator. I wish he was alive today to see riots tearing his United Kingdom apart, to see its economy tanking and to see its musical chair of prime ministers. I wonder what this so-called great man would have said. In America, the opinion was the same. Harry Truman was president back then. Listen to what he said.
I thought India was pretty jammed with poor people and cows wandering around the streets, witch doctors, and people sitting on hot coals and bathing in the Ganges, but I did not realize that anybody thought it was important.
How the times change. Today, America calls India its natural partner. The truth is, nobody expected us to survive, certainly not our democracy. Well, status update. India is now the largest democracy in the world. It has held 18 nationwide elections, all of them ending in peaceful transfers of power. Can't say the same about America, though. All these statements boil down to the same problem: racism. The West couldn't believe that a non-white democracy was even possible, let alone that it could have logical policies. Take non-alignment, for instance. India refused to take sides during the Cold War. Again, Washington was enraged. Their top diplomats called it immoral and evil, a sign of weakness and lack of foresight. That's what they called it. Well, let's cut to 2024. We don't call it non-alignment anymore. We call it strategic autonomy, but the spirit remains the same: putting your interests over camp politics. And everyone is talking about it now. The EU wants strategic autonomy, France wants strategic autonomy, Brazil, Japan, Turkey, all of them want strategic autonomy. So much for lacking foresight. But India was not demoralized by this criticism. Our leaders put their head down and brick by brick, they built a new country. In 1947, India was supposed to be a basket case. Today, it's the next big thing, a world power in the making. Just look at some of the key indicators. In 1947, India's life expectancy was 32 years. Today, it is more than 70 years. Literacy was less than 20% in 1947. Today, it is more than 77%. India's share of the global GDP was just 3% in 1947. It is now almost 10%. We had just 20 universities at the time of independence. Today, there are more than 1,100. Look at foreign exchange reserves. We had just $1.8 billion in 1950. Today, we have almost $650 billion. $650 billion. It's one of the largest forex stocks in the world. Same with food grains. Until the 1960s, India faced food shortages. We had to import food from other countries, but today we are self-sufficient. We are the largest exporter of rice in the world. Of course, this journey was not linear. We had moments of doubt. We had challenges, like the 1962 war against China, a war that we lost. Or the economic crisis in the 1990s, when we had to be bailed out by the IMF. A lot of countries may have lost their way in those moments, but India did not give up. We learned from those mistakes. In the 1970s, India tested its own nuclear bomb, thus establishing security and deterrence. In the 1990s, we liberalized our economy, thus avoiding future economic crises. For any young country out there, this is a lesson, a roadmap to follow. India did not succeed because of global help. We succeeded despite the lack of it. Every Indian leader, every policymaker deserves credit for all of this, for ensuring progress, for modernizing our society, and for preserving democracy. Are we perfect? Of course not. No democracy is perfect. But the question is, do you have the tools to make a perfect democracy? In India, the answer is yes. So tonight, let's celebrate the greatest underdog story, where willpower trumped odds and hardships forged unity. Our next story stays with the theme of independence, but the venue is different. You see, India is not the only country celebrating its independence today. 3 other countries are also marking their freedom. First, there's the Republic of Congo. It's in Central Africa. The Republic of Congo got its freedom from France in 1960 on the 15th of August. Therefore, the country marks its National Day today. So that's one country which is celebrating the day. There are also two others in Asia, two neighboring countries that do not see eye to eye but celebrate the same Independence Day. We are talking about the Koreas. Both North and South Korea also celebrate their Independence Days today. They won their freedom from Japan on August 15, 1945. It's the day Japan surrendered in the Second World War. You see, Japan had occupied Korea in the year 1910. For 35 years, Korea was a Japanese colony, and this was a united Korea before it broke into the North and the South. The entire region was under Japanese occupation. But on August 15, 1945, Korea was free. Well, sort of. It did get freedom from the Japanese, but then it was taken over by others. The Soviets took over the northern part of the country. The US took over the south. This was supposed to be a temporary arrangement. The winners of World War II were supposed to keep Korea in a trusteeship for 5 years and then release an independent, united Korea into the world. But this never happened. Trust between the Soviets and the Americans broke down, and Korea remains fractured even today. However, both Koreas are technically independent. And that came about on the 15th of August 1945 when Japan surrendered. That is why both Koreas, North and South, celebrate their Independence Day today. Of course, their way of celebrating differs. First, let's look at North Korea. The Hermit Kingdom remains true to form. On their Independence Day, the people celebrate their old supreme leaders, Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il, the grandfather and the father of the country's current leader. That's Kim Jong-un. Kim Il-sung was the founder of this dynasty, the original North Korean overlord. So on August 15, the people of North Korea lay flowers at his statue. These visuals are from earlier today. From North Korea's capital, Pyongyang, the celebration is more sober than what you see in South Korea. The South Korean celebrations may seem familiar to other countries who gained independence. Take a look at this.
Let's add the spirit and lessons of our ancestors who achieved liberation 79 years ago to our democracy, economic power, and cultural capabilities.
In South Korea, the people are waving flags, singing and cheering. It feels more natural than the North Korean celebrations and highlights the divisions between the two Koreas. The South took note of that, and their president made an offer to the North today.
Today, I propose that authorities from both Koreas establish inter-Korean working group. The government will make sure that North Korean defectors are properly protected and invited to play a role in enhancing our ability to achieve unification. As long as the state of division persists, our liberation will remain incomplete. The freedom we enjoy must be extended to the frozen kingdom of the North, where people are deprived of freedom and suffer from poverty and starvation.
President Yoon Suk-yeol says he wants to work towards the unification of the Koreas. But he also went ahead and insulted the Kim Jong-un regime and added that this unity would be possible only once Kim starts denuclearization. Well, that's not likely to happen anytime soon. So an independent and unified Korea is still a pipe dream. But at least they can celebrate independence. It's like a recurring nightmare in India. A young woman raped in a mega city, a massive outpouring of anger and a political blame game to boot. We've seen it before in Delhi. We are seeing it again in Kolkata. A 31-year-old doctor was raped and murdered last week, that too at her medical college. The police have arrested one suspect, but multiple questions remain. Like, why wasn't the security better? Why aren't medical colleges better funded? And why does our society keep failing its women? To demand these answers, hundreds of women hit the streets yesterday. They protested well into the night. Such gatherings were seen in most major cities of India, in New Delhi, in Mumbai, in Kolkata, in Bengaluru and in Hyderabad. Take a look at this. Most of these protests were peaceful. You had candlelight vigils, chants and slogans, maybe a speech or two from activists, but that was it. It was about demanding justice peacefully. But in Kolkata, goons hijacked the protest. Dozens of them gathered outside the medical college where the murder happened. They overpowered the police officers, broke through barricades and vandalized the college. Many of the doctors inside were attacked. Even the emergency room was completely destroyed. Take a look. So what exactly happened here? And who were these goons? Well, it's not clear yet. Kolkata police has released pictures of the attackers. A manhunt is on to round them up. But the BJP says the goons were TMC party men. TMC is the Trinamool Congress, the party that rules West Bengal. The BJP, or the Bharatiya Janata Party, is the main opposition in the state. But let's keep the blame game aside for a moment. Let's focus on the bigger questions. Did those goons destroy any crucial evidence? Remember, this crime happened inside the same college. So it's a key part of the investigation. But Kolkata police say the crime scene is fine, that the goons did not touch it. Which brings us to the investigation. The CBI has taken over the probe. That's the Central Bureau of Investigation. It is India's premier probe agency. The CBI team has already reached the city. Reports say their probe will focus on multiple angles, like, was more than one suspect involved? Was evidence destroyed later? And was the college administration involved? There is already talk of a cover-up. You see, the college authorities found the victim on Friday morning. But they told her parents she died by suicide. Why would they do that? The police also filed a case of unnatural death. Again, this is strange. Such a case is filed when there is no complaint. But this was a clear case of rape and murder. So why did the college not file a complaint? These are all questions that must be answered, which means we must keep up the pressure. I know the political games have started, but this goes beyond all that. And we must say here, this is not a problem limited to one college or one state. This is a nationwide problem. The problem of taking women for granted. It's a great campaign stump for politicians, calling yourself a defender of women or promising to ensure women's safety. But what about your own party men? Just look at the current Lok Sabha. 15 MPs, 15 members of parliament face charges of crimes against women. 2 of them are charged with rape. Will these men make laws to protect Indian women? Looks very unlikely to me. The problem is women's safety is never on the ballot. And don't get me wrong, it can be used to galvanize the public, but it's never a deciding factor when you vote. It's always caste or religion or benefits. It is never women's safety. We need to change that. Political parties must realize that there is a cost to not protecting women. If not, things will never really change. We will be stuck in this recurring nightmare. Bangladesh too is stuck in a nightmare. The violence on the streets refuses to die as the interim government struggles to restore law and order. The political parties are fueling more chaos. They're waging a power battle with sticks and rods. Members of the Bangladesh Nationalist Party, the BNP, the party of Khalida Zia, clashed with supporters of the Awami League. That's the party of Sheikh Hasina, the ousted Prime Minister. Meanwhile, the United Nations is set to begin an investigation into the killings during the student protests. Our next report tells you more.
Clashes have erupted on the streets of Dhaka again. Last night, a large group of armed men showed up in Dhanmondi, right outside what used to be the home of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. It was right here where Sheikh Mujib, along with most of his family, were assassinated in a military coup. Almost 50 years later, Sheikh Mujib's home has become the scene for another political upheaval. There were violent clashes. The angry mob, with bamboo sticks, iron rods and pipes, targeted supporters of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. The mob had members of the Chhatra Dal. This is the student wing of the BNP, or the Bangladesh Nationalist Party of Khalida Zia. They have been attacking supporters of the Awami League since the events of last week. This morning there were fresh clashes again. Sheikh Hasina supporters called for a rally. They are observing the National Mourning Day today in memory of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. He was assassinated on this very day. Once again, a mob showed up with sticks in their hands. There was a showdown.
As you can see, there is a condition here. There is no scope to showcase personal or political honor. Yet if someone comes to spike the situation with dishonest intention, students and the public will resist it for sure.
It has been over a week since the ouster of Sheikh Hasina, but peace is yet to return to the streets of Bangladesh. Organizers of the student protests, those who led the movement against Sheikh Hasina, are now expressing concerns. They fear that their movement could be hijacked by political interests.
We, the students and people who waged a mass upsurge with the sacrifice of thousands of people and brought new independence, will sacrifice more lives if we need to, but we will not allow this counter-upsurge. As soon as we found out about this conspiracy, we took to the streets and we are now making our stand.
The violence on the streets is an indictment for the interim government. They had vowed to restore law and order in Bangladesh, but it seems like they have a long way to go.
It's been 3 years. 3 years of the Taliban takeover in Afghanistan. It happened in 2021, the Battle of Kabul, when the Taliban entered the Afghan capital and the US-backed government collapsed. The same Taliban have completed 3 years in power and they're celebrating with a grand military parade. Take a look. That parade took place near Kabul yesterday at the Bagram Air Base. This was the largest US military base in Afghanistan. It used to be their base of operations, the center of their efforts to oust the Taliban. But now, the same Taliban are using the base and all the equipment left behind. Let's take stock of some of it. Those are all-terrain vehicles, or ATVs, perfect for Afghanistan's rough landscape. The Taliban will be able to use them all over the country. Then you have M1117 armored security vehicles, perfect for transporting troops safely. These are old Humvees with what looks like a Soviet-era anti-aircraft gun attached. And the Taliban don't just have old-school Humvees, they also have the modern ones, which they also flaunted at Bagram. Then there are the bigger prizes, like the MRAPs, mine-resistant ambush-protected vehicles, in case the Taliban need to go to an area littered with mines. Then there are the tanks. The Taliban now has an assortment, and they were all on display, but their biggest prize was not seen on the tarmac. It was up in the air, the Black Hawk helicopters. The same helicopters that were once used to hunt them down, the Taliban are now flying them. So you can see why they're jubilant.
We give thanks for this blessing. We know its value when we think about the past situations through which hardships and pains we achieved this freedom.
The Taliban call it freedom. In 2021, they kicked out the Western occupying force and took away all the equipment you just saw. Most of it was American, but look closely and you'll spot some other nations too. That armored vehicle has a Danish flag on it. It was roaming the streets of Kabul, where Taliban fighters were out in full force, riding their bikes and waving their white flag. That is the Taliban's flag, their mark of control over Afghanistan. What you've been watching is the aftermath of the Western retreat from Afghanistan. From the year 2001 to 2021, the US and its allies were in Afghanistan. They defeated the first Taliban regime and proceeded to install a friendly government in its place. The West bombed the Taliban to oblivion and back, ignoring the number of innocent civilians caught in the explosions. And as a result, they helped the same Taliban regroup. The Taliban took advantage of the West's unpopularity. They recruited people who hated American bombs, and they built up a new army. Meanwhile, the US began to see Afghanistan as a never-ending war, so they decided to leave. In 2020, Donald Trump negotiated a withdrawal with the Taliban, and Joe Biden followed through with it the following year. The West-backed government in Kabul was left to fend for itself, and it collapsed in days. The fall was in fact so fast that even the West was caught unawares. American troops could barely get out in time, and they definitely did not have enough time to pack up their equipment, which is what you saw at the beginning. All the Western weapons left behind as spoils of war for the Taliban. What was the result of all this? Of the billions squandered on this equipment, of the thousands of lives lost, what did the West really achieve here? Afghanistan seems to be in a worse place than ever. The country is reeling from poverty. About half the population needs aid to survive. Women's rights are non-existent. They have systematically been barred from all public life, and women cannot get any education after the age of 12. Meanwhile, the Taliban are better equipped than ever before. They're running around in Humvees and Black Hawks. So I ask again, what did the West achieve with its 20-year-long Afghan war? The US and its allies should reflect on this, think about the horror they wrought, and hang their heads in shame. $200 million, that's how many iPhones are made every year, 200 million iPhones. And who makes them? A bunch of players, but one name stands out. That's Foxconn. Foxconn makes 70% of all iPhones. It's a Taiwanese tech giant. It makes more than 140 million iPhones every year. And not just that, it also makes Amazon Kindles, Google Pixel devices, and Sony's PlayStation. Foxconn is the biggest manufacturer of electronics in the world. It is also one of the world's biggest employers. It employs 1.3 million people. But why are we talking about it tonight? Because the Foxconn chairman was in India this week. This man, Young Liu, He met Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The two discussed a lot of issues, including artificial intelligence, semiconductor manufacturing, and local production. Sounds like a productive meeting, and it's part of Foxconn's bigger plan. It wants to cash in on India's growing economy. It wants to expand in India. The company plans to invest $1.6 billion in new projects. Where will this money go? Who will benefit from these projects, and what's at stake for India? First, let's look at Foxconn's presence in India. They opened their first factory in the southern Indian state of Tamil Nadu. This was in the year 2017, the first Foxconn factory in Tamil Nadu. And since then, they've only expanded. Currently, Foxconn has 30 factories in India, 30. Also 9 production campuses. It employs thousands of people. In 2022, Foxconn made $30 billion in India. That was 4.6% of its total revenue, $30 billion. This was up from nearly 2% in 2021, so more than double in 1 year. In 2023, that is last year, they started making the iPhone 15 in India. And by 2028, 25% of all phones could be made in India. That's a lot of numbers, but the trajectory is clear. Foxconn is eyeing a bigger business here. What makes India an attractive destination for the company? The first reason is the geopolitical uncertainty. China accounts for 75% of the company's production, but Foxconn wants to change that. It wants to bring it down to less than 50% at least. So they're looking for alternatives, and India is one of them. The second reason for focusing on India is familiarity. You see, Foxconn already has a comprehensive setup in India. It is familiar with this country, so it can just build on its existing facilities. According to representatives, Foxconn wants to double its business in India, so the plans are ambitious. But what does India stand to gain? Well, a lot. New Delhi aims to become a global manufacturing hub. The Prime Minister spoke about this today. India also wants to position itself as an alternative supplier to China, and Foxconn could be key to that plan. Plus, it will create more jobs. In Tamil Nadu, the company will invest $190 million. This is for a new electronics components unit. It will create more than 6,000 jobs. In Telangana, they plan to invest over $357 million. This is for an existing facility. In Karnataka, they plan to invest some $600 million. This is for 2 new factories, and this is over and above a $700 million facility near the Bengaluru airport. So a lot of money is being poured in, and India stands to gain. But it hasn't always been such a rosy relationship. In the month of June this year, Foxconn got into trouble here over a hiring bias. Apparently, the company was not hiring married women for its factories. And it's not the first time such a controversy has come to light. In 2021, there was a food poisoning outbreak in its Tamil Nadu factory. It led to a lot of protest. Plus, there were safety risks and multiple labor violations. Foxconn also pulled out of a joint venture to make semiconductors in India, so there have been issues before. But looks like both sides want to put it in the past. Right now, Foxconn is betting big on India, and New Delhi wants to leverage that. Our next story is about artificial intelligence featuring X, formerly known as Twitter. They've begun beta testing their AI chatbot. It's called Grok 2. It can generate images with text prompts. But what's the USP of Grok? Apparently, it is the most fun AI in the world. That's what the company's owner Elon Musk says. And by fun, he seems to mean really offensive content, because Grok has been serving up deep fakes of politicians, sexualized images of celebrities, and problematic violent images of ongoing wars. This is all fake. But it is a real challenge for the world, especially for the US, which is heading into a presidential election. Elon Musk has endorsed Republican candidate Donald Trump, and it seems Grok is doing the same. It shows Trump as a president for all ages, literally. What about Democratic candidate Kamala Harris? She is seen burning the American flag. Here's a report.
What's the weirdest idea you've ever had? Have you ever wanted to picture it? Well, now you can. thanks to X, formerly known as Twitter. On Wednesday, X began beta testing its AI chatbot, Grok 2. It has a new feature for the paid subscribers of X. Grok 2 can generate images with text prompts. This technology is not revolutionary by any means. OpenAI's ChatGPT and a number of other AI chatbots can also generate images. But Grok 2 does have a differentiating factor. Billionaire Elon Musk, the owner of X, wants Grok to be the most fun AI in the world. And clearly, X users are having fun with it. On Wednesday, users went wild posting some of the images that Grok can make for you. Want children's characters holding weapons? What about Pikachu with a gun? Or Goofy with a saw? That's one killer image. And it's doable. Want former US President Barack Obama doing drugs? Doable. Want US presidential candidate Kamala Harris holding a gun? Sure. What about Harris and Donald Trump carrying out the 9/11 attack? Done. Apparently, anything goes. Grok has led to a flood of offensive and strange AI-generated images, and this is only the tip of the iceberg. Some of the pictures are too explicit to show. There are deepfakes of politicians and celebrities, sexualized images, and violent pictures of ongoing wars. This feels like a repeat of 2022, when AI image generators entered the market. There were no guardrails, only really dumb ideas. We have come a long way since then. Now, most of the prominent AI generators have three important restrictions: no violence, no impersonation of real people, and no hate speech. Most chatbots today steer clear of these three topics. But not Grok. And this is no surprise. Ever since Musk took over X, the company has operated a whole lot differently, with many of its trust and safety team members and engineers getting fired. Now, ahead of the US elections, Grok is posing big risks. On the one hand, it seems to be in love with Donald Trump, the Republican presidential candidate and 45th US president. When asked for an image of the 46th US president, Grok says Trump. 47th president? Trump. 16th, and even the first president, it seems, was Trump. On the other hand, you have AI-generated images of Kamala Harris, the Democratic presidential candidate. She seems to be burning her country's flag. Even though the image is completely fake, that's not a good look for someone on the campaign trail. What's more, people have taken this a step further. They're using other AI tools to animate the image. Look at this. So there you have it. Grok may promise free speech, but its leanings scream Musk. And this is bound to be a problem for the US government ahead of the presidential election. Only time will tell if they can fix it before D-Day, because Musk, the new cowboy of the Wild Wild West, has thrown caution to the wind to chase his definition of free speech and fun.
For our next story, let me ask you a question. How do you like your coffee? Black with a dash of milk or iced in every season? Well, whatever your choice, there is trouble brewing for you. Your coffee will soon become more expensive courtesy climate change. And this is a big deal because coffee is the second most consumed beverage in the world. The first, obviously, is water. 2.25 billion cups of coffee are consumed every day. 2.25 billion every day. Clearly, it's all the global rage. But what about India? Traditionally, we've not been coffee enthusiasts. We are more of a tea drinking nation. Coffee was seen as a niche in most parts of the country, a luxury that many people cannot afford. But of late, there's been a shift. Indians are consuming coffee worth $51 billion every year. I mean, look around you. You will see more and more coffee chains, more coffee options and niche brands, which begs the questions. What brought about this change? How big is India's coffee industry now? Who is leading this market and how much potential does it have? A quick primer first. Coffee came to India in the late 17th century, and the credit goes to this man, Baba Budan. He went on a pilgrimage to Mecca. While returning, he smuggled some coffee beans. Apparently, they were hidden in his beard. Don't ask me how. He got them to India and planted them in the hills of Chikmagalur. That's in the Indian state of Karnataka. The fate of those beans is not documented. But look at where we are. India is the 6th largest producer of coffee. Plantations are concentrated here in all these states, and Karnataka leads the game, accounting for 70% of India's coffee production. In 2023, India's coffee exports were over $1 billion, so we are a major exporter. But what about the domestic market? It's worth $500 million and it's growing fast. By 2032, it could be over $1 billion, and one demographic is propelling it: the youth. India's median age is around 28 years. We have a young population. A lot of them seem to prefer coffee, and brands are cashing in on this trend. It started with Cafe Coffee Day back in 1996. The brand pioneered India's coffee culture. Debt nearly ended the flagship chain, but more brands entered the picture, like Starbucks in 2012. It was one of the first foreign coffee brands in India. Initially, Starbucks focused on big cities. It took 11 years to open 343 stores. But the US coffee giant has since changed its strategy. By 2028, they plan to open 1,000 stores in India. That means one new store every 3 days. And the focus now is on Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities. Starbucks wants to expand. It's competing with local brands like Blue Tokai and Third Wave. They are fast expanding their footprint. In the last 3 years, both brands have opened more than 150 stores, and their drinks cost less. In the meantime, a lot of other Indian coffee chains have also sprung up. There's Subco, Araku Coffee, Nothing Before Coffee, and Ab Coffee. More and more outlets are coming up every day, and investors are waking up to this trend. Third Wave Coffee has raised $66 million till date. Subco secured $10 million in funding in the month of March. But there's still one question. Are coffee shops still a luxury for the Indian consumer? An average cup of coffee costs between $3 to $4 in India. The daily minimum wage is around $2. So at that price point, it's unaffordable for most consumers. But coffee chains want to tap into India's middle class and upper middle class. Estimates say that's around 432 million people. The middle class and upper middle class, even if 5% of them, of the more than 400 million people, even if 5% of them buy coffee, it will still amount to huge sales. And that's the market that these brands want to target. Right now, India's coffee penetration is just 3.6%. By 2029, it could go up to 6%. That makes it a market with a lot of potential. And as of today, it's brewing with excitement. Raise your hand if you read terms and conditions when you download an app or sign up for a streaming service or open a new bank account. Anyone? Well, that's what we thought. Terms and conditions contracts are complex and long-winding, so most of us do not read them. We simply hit the agree button. But this only works in the interest of companies. Our last story tonight is an example of that. Disney is being sued over the death of a woman. She died after having an allergic reaction at a restaurant in Disney World. But Disney wants this lawsuit halted. Do you know why? Because the man suing them signed up for a free trial version of Disney Plus many years ago. He agreed to Disney's terms and conditions without reading them, and Disney is making sure he regrets it. Here is a report.
Corporate America strikes again, and this time it will leave you saying, wait, what? But if that's literally your question, here's what's happening. Disney wants a wrongful death suit thrown out because the man suing Disney had signed up for Disney Plus years ago. The streaming service, not even the real deal, for a free 1-month trial version. Here's what happened. The day was October 5th, 2023. Jeffrey Piccolo was at Disney World in Orlando, Florida with his wife. They were having lunch. Now, Piccolo's wife was severely allergic to dairy and nuts. This was allegedly informed to the restaurant servers. But later that day, his wife died. She had an allergic reaction to the food. She suffered from anaphylaxis due to elevated levels of dairy and nut in her system. Now a widower, Piccolo has sued Disney for about $50,000. But Disney does not intend to make this easy for him. They say that the restaurant is quote-unquote neither owned nor operated by Disney. So it just exists on their property, and Disney claims it has no responsibility here. They want the case to be halted and the dispute to be resolved out of court in a process called arbitration, which is overseen by a third party who is not a judge. It's quicker and cheaper than a court case. This is a $158 billion company, so clearly money is not the problem here. They simply don't want a court case, and that's apparently okay. Why? Because Piccolo has a Disney account. That's the reason the company is citing to dismiss the case. They say that Piccolo created the account in 2019 for a free trial of Disney+. He agreed to the terms and services which say that Disney users agree to settle out of court. Piccolo's lawyers have called these arguments preposterous and inane. But this hasn't stopped Disney from pushing the envelope of legalities. While this has caused widespread anger online, this is also raising concerns. We don't need to read any fine print to know this. Most of us don't read terms and conditions. In fact, over 90% of consumers accept legal terms and conditions without reading them. It's obvious why. The language is too complex. The text is long-winded, not to mention it's boring. Back in 2011, Apple went viral for iTunes legal terms spread over 56 pages. That's more reading than many of us do in a whole week. But even today, do you know how long it will take you to finish reading the terms and conditions for any well-known e-reading device? It's 9 hours. Will you devote 9 hours to a text with 0 plot lines and no pictures? Most likely, no. Ideally, you should not skip the small print, but the next best choice is this: skimming through it and understanding the basic and most important terms used in contracts. Every app we download, ebook we read, streaming service we join, or video game we play, whether on our phones, laptops, or tablets, we have to agree to a contract. It may seem banal and boring, but it's legally binding. So we should read between the lines, because companies are counting on us not to.
Donald Trump has found a new enemy. Rather, he's rediscovered an old enemy. And no, it's not Kamala Harris, it's not her running mate either. In fact, it's not a human being at all. Trump's new enemy is windmills. You may think it's because he likes oil and gas or because he's a climate change denier, but that is not the reason why. The real reason that wind is kryptonite for Donald Trump is his hair. A strong gush could dent his ratings, certainly more than the criminal cases ever did. But what exactly is his grievance? Well, Trump's understanding of windmills is rudimentary. He says if the wind doesn't blow, your TV won't turn on. Needless to say, that's not how wind energy works, and it doesn't end there. Trump has had some crazy theories about windmills, theories he keeps recycling and repeating. I guess at least the joke is renewable.
That's the stuff that powers the plants. It's not wind that goes around and around. And darling, let's watch the president's State of the Union speech tonight. I'm sorry, we won't be able to do it. The wind isn't blowing, darling. If you want to see a bird cemetery, go under a windmill sometime. You'll see birds like you never saw. If you love birds, you'll start to weep. But it's just the craziest thing. They ruin our plains and fields. They're killing our whales. What? You can blow up a pipeline. You can blow up the windmills. You know, the windmills. Boom, boom, boom. Bing, that's the end of that windmill. If you have a windmill anywhere near your house, congratulations. Your house just went down 75% in value.
No. Suna kya? Ye bhi meri galti hai.
And they say the noise causes cancer. You tell me that one, okay?
Now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. A 5.7 magnitude earthquake rattles northeastern Taiwan. Brussels rolls out a massive flower carpet in the middle of a historic square. And a groovy giant panda shows off its funky dance moves at a Chinese zoo. Finally, we're taking you back in history. On this day in 1945, Emperor Hirohito announced Japan's surrender in the Second World War. It followed the dropping of 2 atomic bombs on Japan. The surrender also marked the end of the war. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. We will see you tomorrow.